Hello, my friends. So today I'm going to share with you a personal story, and I would love for you to listen carefully, whether you're um, a professional scientist or not, and also if you're interested in the subject of consciousness and what I'm calling today the hard problem of matter, solving the hard problem of matter and understanding consciousness as fundamental reality. Before I do that, I'd like to share a little bit of history with you. So in 1988, I wrote a book called Quantum Healing, which was vilified by the scientific mainstream establishment, although it became a national bestseller. That was 1988. In 2002, I gave a TED talk, which was a rebuttal to Richard Dawkins' talk on the God delusion. 2002. The talk was officially taken off from the website of TED till I protested, and then it was actually put back on the website, but with comments from TED that the talk was incoherent and not focused and was non-scientific, but because of the exchange of letters between me and the TED faculty, TED establishment, they published the talk on the TED website with all kinds of warnings that it was pseudoscience or words to that effect. Following this, my reputation really deteriorated among scientists, among a lot of scientists. And I was called everything from pseudoscientist to fraud to huckster, etc. Let me read something from Wikipedia. I just made notes from Wikipedia. Chopra uses quantum jargon and plausible hocus pocus to promote his ideas. That's my friend Richard Dawkins. We've had several encounters, but I think right now the temperature of our engagement, if any, is fine. I respect Richard for his views, and he's toned down his criticism as well. But nevertheless, you'll find this on Wikipedia. Also, you'll find on Wikipedia, his discussions have been characterized as technobabble, incoherent babbling strewn with scientific terms, which drives those who actually understand physics crazy, and as redefining what is even wrong. And that's from Wikipedia. I drive real physicists crazy. Well, since physicists only believe in objective reality, I think to drive them crazy would be a little non-scientific, or so I think. Chopra promotes his ideas, and they have been medically and scientifically described as pseudoscience. The criticism has been described as ranging from dismissive to damning. From dismissive to damning. Okay, so that's my reputation in the scientific world. And you can find the link to the TED Talk on my YouTube channel, 2002, and also to a debate that I had much later, I think almost 2012, at Caltech, where where in the middle of the debate, which was hosted by ABC, Leonard Malorno got up and said I was full of bullshit, basically, that he was co-author of Grand Design with Stephen Hawking, and that everything I said was basically incoherent, or so he implied. He asked me to define consciousness in that officially televised debate. I called it a field of infinite possibilities. If I remember correctly, I called it the superposition of infinite possibilities. And Leonard responded, I know what superposition is, but it's not what I think. It's not what you think it is, basically, saying that superposition of possibilities was a singularity, a mathematical singularity, essentially nothing to do with consciousness. So, I've persisted in the metaphor of quantum consciousness, notwithstanding now being criticized for 1988 to 2000, that's 12 years now, 23 years more, so 35 years. I have been criticized, vilified on Wikipedia, etc., etc. If any of you is an editor on Wikipedia, maybe you're listening to this. Okay, so much for the criticism, and I've persisted. In fact, I'm now coming out with a new book, which will be out this year, with a quantum physicist, Jack Tuzinski, and another endocrinologist, and the book is called Quantum Body. I think this will drive physicists, a lot of mainstream physicists, even more crazy than quantum healing. Why do I defend the quantum mechanical model as actually supporting consciousness as a field of infinite possibilities, superposition, entanglement, whatever you might call it? Let me give you a few simple thoughts to think about. Every thought is a space-time event in consciousness. Point number one. Point number two, thoughts are like energetic virtual particles that appear from emptiness as determined by the uncertainty principle. Let me ask you to predict your next thought. You probably can't. Thoughts take quantum jumps. Imagination takes quantum leaps of creativity. Okay, so think of the Empire State Building and now think of your mother. No connection. That's a quantum leap in imagination. Imagining the visual image of the Empire State Building and then your mother, you have to return in your subtle body, in your mind, from an experience that has form, Empire State Building, an experience you return to, which is not an experience, which is formlessness, and then suddenly a new image in the mind, your mother. It's a discontinuity. It's like a quantum leap. So thoughts take quantum leaps. Imagination takes leaps of creativity. In the same manner as particles move from one location to another without going through the space in between, so too thoughts move from one location to another in consciousness, to another location in consciousness without going through the space in between. Thoughts are unpredictable. Space-time events, as determined by the uncertainty principle or collapse of the wave function, is also similarly unpredictable. And unpredictability is creativity. Otherwise, you're an algorithm. All thoughts are entangled with other thoughts. I think that's pretty reasonable. Thoughts, sensations, images, feelings are entangled vibrations in consciousness. And vibrations of consciousness are like quantum fluctuations, ultimately taking on the appearance of space-time, energy, and mass. To quote Einstein, mass is the appearance of condensed emptiness. Now, here's something which will drive physicists totally crazy. Karma is the interpretation of past experiences, determining the likelihood of present choices, similar to the collapse of wave function as determined by the uncertainty principle. But there's a probability amplitude in that Schrödinger equation. Creativity is a function of unpredictability and escape from karma, statistical likelihood of space-time events, collapse of wave function as determined by the probability being determined by previous episodes of collapse or appearance of space-time events. In the wisdom non-dual traditions, physical reality, subtle reality, and causal reality are all modified forms of pure consciousness, the field of infinite possibilities. The subtle body is mind, intellect, and ego. The physical body is what you see as a perceptual activity. It's in fact not material. It's a verb, a continuum of perceptions from fertilized egg to embryo and to zygote and embryo and baby and toddler and all the way to dusty death. So these are perceptual activities that we interpret as the physical body of matter and energy. But if you go a little bit more subtle, as in the wisdom traditions, you have something called a subtle body. And the subtle body is mind, intellect, and ego. It behaves like, similar to the principles of quantum mechanics as well. All possibilities, unpredictability, entanglement, quantum leaps, creativity, these are the functions of consciousness, and they fit the model of quantum mechanics. So in reality, both quantum physics and mechanics, as described by humans, and understanding causal body, subtle body, and physical body, as described in the traditions of non-duality, both are metaphors. Ultimate reality is incomprehensible. It is ineffable. It is unimaginable. But it can be experienced as transcendence or samadhi, where observer, mode of observation, and that which is observed all become one unified field of reality. There's a big, has been a big struggle in physics on finding the ultimate theory of everything, the theory of everything, TOE, theory of everything. The great quest of Einstein, who wanted to unify quantum mechanics with gravity. Until now, unsuccessful. But even if it was successful, it would not be a theory of everything, because it would exclude what is the basis of all theories, which is consciousness. So the theory of everything is not the theory of reality. Current theory of everything is not the theory of reality, because it excludes the very thing that we call consciousness that creates the experience, perceptual experience of what we call reality. So right now, you know also that there's something called the hard problem of consciousness, which is how do force fields, atoms, molecules, and gravity create mind? How do they create the experience of thoughts and images and feelings and sensations that we experience as mind? How does matter create mind? I would posit that actually matter doesn't create mind because there is no substance called matter. Matter is a human name for human perceptual activity. And just like the model of matter, when we get to quantum fluctuations, it disappears as a thing and becomes a fluctuation. So too, what we call matter is condensed mind, condensed emptiness, as Einstein said. I'm quoting Einstein. Matter is condensed emptiness. So in conclusion, I think there is no hard problem of consciousness. And the hard problem of matter is also solved when you understand that matter is an interpretation of human perceptual activity and therefore a human construct in mind. That's how mind creates matter. And that possibly the quantum mechanical body is everything that we call mind. And its cognitive and perceptual activities. So in defense of my critics, I think calling me pseudoscientist may be valid because science is based on naive realism, subject-object split, matter as the ontological primitive, and also the idea that the human perception of or the human experience of what we call reality is actually an interpretation of reality in consciousness, that what we perceive is not reality and doesn't matter how subtle it is or how big it is. Our perceptual apparatus evolved in the savannah and cannot comprehend the extremely large or the extremely small or even movements that are extremely fast or extremely slow. So what I propose would be considered pseudoscience, and because it's not based on naive realism. So all my friends who are watching this, I suggest you go look at, if you're interested in the history of this evolution of this thinking, then go back to Quantum Healing, which was reissued a few years ago with an introduction by Rudy Tanzi, the genetist at Harvard. And I will soon be releasing Quantum Body, which is co-authored by a quantum physicist, Jack Tuzinski, and an endocrinologist like myself, Brian Fertig. Okay, the conversation continues, the criticism continues, and the exchange, dialogue between scientists and so-called pseudoscientists like myself continues, which I like actually, even though sometimes the criticism is directed personally at me. I don't anymore take it personally because otherwise I would be offended for the rest of my life. Okay, and not being offended has given me the ability to continue exploring the quantum mechanical model and consciousness as the ultimate reality that creates all models, quantum mechanical, Newtonian, And as Alfred Korzybski said, these models are like maps, and the map is not the territory. Okay, I'd love any feedback from scientists, science journalists, critics, and those who may be sympathetic to this worldview of quantum consciousness and the solution to the hard problem of matter. More to come. Thank you very much.